Okay, let's just dive right in. If you are trying to make sense of the housing market right now, chances are you feel like you're caught in a crossfire. It's just a storm of conflicting information.
It really is. On one hand, you have these national headlines that are, talking about stabilizing rates, maybe some glimmers of optimism,
Right, a little bit of hope.
a little bit. But then on the other hand, you're getting these relentless local stories about, an affordability crisis, slow sales, houses just sitting. It feels like two completely different realities.
It does, and that's exactly why we're doing this. We're going deep, deep into the North Texas real estate market, and we're not using anecdotes. We are pulling the detailed transaction data straight from the source for October 2025.
And that feeling of conflicting information, it's completely rational. It's what the data actually shows. Nationally, like we said, there's chatter about rates maybe finding a floor. But here, locally, the market narrative is still just choked by those elevated interest rates.
And by this dominant economic force, this thing we keep calling the lock-in effect.
The lock-in effect. It's probably the single most important factor on the supply side right now.
And let's just clarify for everyone, because it's so critical. The lock-in effect is this enormous group of existing homeowners, right? The people who would normally be sellers.
Exactly.
And they are, for all practical purposes, handcuffed to their current homes.
Yeah.
They're sitting on these amazing mortgage rates they got years ago, 3%, maybe even sub 3, 4%.
Golden handcuffs.
Totally. And so for them, moving means trading that incredible rate for one that might be 6, maybe even 7% today.
And that's not a small jump. You're talking about adding hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars to your monthly housing cost just for the privilege of moving.
So what do?
They don't move. They just stay put.
Wow.
And that reluctance, that choice to not sell, creates this profound economic tension across the entire market.
Explain that tension, because it's sort of a paradox, isn't it?
It is. Think about it. If supply is constrained because all these homeowners won't list their houses, basic economics says prices should stay high. Scarcity, right?
Right. Low supply, high prices.
But at the same time, buyer demand is also being choked off by those exact same high borrowing costs. So you have sellers who don't want to sell and buyers who can't afford to buy.
So something has to give.
Something has to give. And usually what gives is either the price or the number of sales, the velocity of the market. And that friction, that tension, is what is defining the DFW market right now.
Okay, so that sets up our mission for today perfectly. It is absolutely critical that we move past the national averages, move past the generalized fear. We're going to zero in on the really detailed street-level data.
The stuff that comes straight from NTREIS.
Exactly, the North Texas Real Estate Information Systems. And we're going to contrast the broad regional headwinds we see across the entire Metroplex with one really remarkable local story.
And that's the story of Tarrant County.
The unexpected and, frankly, kind of surprising resilience that we are seeing specifically in Tarrant County. We have to figure out why it's holding up so much better.
We really do. We need to see exactly where those big regional averages are masking these profound local differences. Our initial snapshot of North Texas, it confirms all those headwinds you hear about.
It does. Let's just state it plainly from the top. What does the whole Metroplex look like?
Broadly speaking, inventory is up, substantially up. Prices are down slightly. And maybe most critically, homes are just taking noticeably longer to get a contract and actually close.
So that generalized slowdown is real. It's not just a feeling.
Oh, it's very real. And that sets the critical analytical tension for our whole deep dive. You would naturally assume Tarrant County is suffering that exact same fate.
But the data just doesn't show that.
The data suggests something entirely different is happening there.
All right, so before we get to Tarrant, we have to properly frame this local drama. We have to establish the national context first. So let's start with the big picture. Pulling from the National Association of Realtors data for U.S. existing home sales in October. Nationally, things actually looked okay. We saw a little glimmer of positive momentum. Existing home sales climbed. They were up 1.5% for the month before and up 4.1% from the year before.
Right, reaching an annual rate of about 4.06 million units. And that national lift is a really vital piece of context.
Why was that happening? What was driving that little burst of activity?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. That slight national increase, it was almost entirely fueled by mortgage rates hitting their lowest point in over a year, during that specific reporting period.
This is proof of concept.
It's perfect proof of concept. It shows us that any relief at all in borrowing costs immediately translates into more sales. It signals this massive coiled spring of pent-up demand just waiting for a chance.
And it wasn't just in one spot, right? This was pretty broad-based.
It was. Sales were up in 3 of the 4 major regions. The Northeast, the South, and the West all saw increases.
Okay, and this is the really surprising part for me. Even with all the rate drama, national median pricing continued to climb. It just keeps defying gravity.
It does. The national median existing home price actually grew 2.1% year over year. It's now at $415,200.
So what does that tell you?
It confirms that on a global scale, across the entire U.S., the story is still about scarcity. Scarcity is trumping interest rate concerns in a lot of key markets. There just aren't enough homes for sale nationally.
However, this is where the North Texas story just completely decouples. It's like we're operating in a different economic zone.
We really are. We operate on such a massive scale here, and we're seeing very different forces at play.
Okay, so let's pivot. Let's establish the North Texas baseline. When we look at the NTREIS data for the entire Metroplex, the whole big picture, what is the single most dominant trend? What makes us so different from that national price appreciation?
One word: supply. The single most significant regional metric, the one that is fundamentally reshaping the market here, is the surge in supply.
A surge is a strong word.
It is, but it's accurate. We saw a dramatic year-over-year increase of 7.4% in the inventory of homes for sale.
And what does that mean in, like, real numbers? How many houses?
That brings our total supply, our total inventory, up to an enormous 50,080 units available for sale across the entire NTREIS coverage area.
50,000 listings. I mean, that is not a small adjustment. That's a tidal wave of supply, especially when you compare it to the markets we had in 2021 and 2022, which were just desert dry.
A completely different world.
So what does a 7.4% jump in available homes signal to you? Especially with that lock-in effect we know is still happening. Where are these houses coming from?
Well, it signals a couple of things. First, you're right, the lock-in effect is real for legacy homeowners. But high interest rates are also finally slowing down the pace of new construction absorption.
So the builders' homes are sitting longer.
Exactly. They're adding to the inventory count for longer periods. And second, we're likely seeing investors who jumped into the market during the boom now facing some pressure. Maybe their loans are resetting, or they're just choosing to liquidate some of their portfolio properties.
Cashing out.
Cashing out and adding to that supply. So that inventory surge is the clearest sign you can get that the market environment has fundamentally shifted away from scarcity and toward choice.
And when supply jumps that much, when buyers suddenly have 50,000 choices instead of 5,000, it has to put pressure on pricing.
Inevitably.
So regionally, we saw the price correction that we did not see nationally.
Absolutely. The regional median sales price, it dipped 2.7% year over year, settling at $360,000.
That's a noticeable drop.
It is. But it's important to keep some perspective here. While October saw that distinct dip, and for some sellers that's a measurable, painful drop, if you look at the whole year, the year-to-date median price is only down a marginal 0.5%.
Okay, so just 0.5% for the year as a whole.
Right. We're not talking about a market collapse.
Yeah.
But we are talking about a very noticeable deceleration and a price adjustment that is being driven almost entirely by that inventory pressure.
Still, that 2.7% dip for the month, that's a meaningful swing for us in North Texas, especially when you remember the U.S. median price rose by 2.1%.
That's the key comparison.
That's a 4.8 percentage point divergence. That's how you know DFW has truly decoupled from the national trend.
No question about it.
So are buyers rushing in? Are they seeing these slightly lower prices and jumping at the chance, or are they still just frozen by the high borrowing costs?
It looks like they're still stuck in a holding kitchen, or at the very least, they're adopting an extremely cautious stance. We can measure this pretty clearly by looking at transaction volume.
All right.
Pending sales, these are the contracts that were accepted in October. They saw a sharp decrease, down 8.7%, landing at just 8,569 units.
And why is that number so critical?
It's critical because it tells us about buyer intent right now. It's the most current measure of market activity.
Wait a second. So let me get this straight. The number of homes for sale is up 7.4%.
Right.
But the number of people committing to buy those homes is down 8.7%.
Yes.
That creates a massive drag on the market.
That is the definition of drag. A sharp drop in pending sales is a leading indicator. It's a warning light. It means that even though there are thousands more homes to choose from, nearly 800 fewer families actually committed to buying one this month compared to last year.
And the reason has to be the rates.
It suggests that the pain of the interest rate far, far outweighs the perceived benefit of slightly lower prices or having more choice.
And that sluggishness, that lack of commitment, it has to translate directly to the final numbers, the closed sales.
It does. Closed sales, the final recorded transactions, they also decreased by 1.7% to 90,324 units. So when you combine significantly fewer accepted contracts with fewer completed sales, it just paints this really clear picture of a market that's slowing down.
We're seeing a rapid deceleration in market motion.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And speaking of slow motion, I think the amount of time a property just sits on the market is maybe the most visceral indicator for people. It's the one you can feel. It creates seller anxiety, gives buyers power. What happened to our regional days on market, the DOM?
The DOM figure is it's very telling. Regionally, the average time jumped 11.9% year-over-year.
To what?
To 66 days.
66 days. Wow. Let's put that in perspective. During the frenzy of 2021, 2022, that number was what? Under 20 days?
Often under 20, sometimes single digits in hot areas. So when the average time until you get a sale pushes past 2 months, that is a profound psychological shift, especially for sellers.
It changes everything for them.
Everything. They have to realize that the days of listing a home high on a Friday and having a dozen offers by Sunday, those days are definitively over. They're now facing carrying costs, paying the mortgage on an empty house, price reductions, and just weeks and weeks uncertainty.
And all that uncertainty, all that anxiety, it transfers power directly to the buyer, which brings us to the money, seller concessions. If a home sits for 66 days, the buyer's going to expect a discount.
They do, and you know what? They're getting it. The percent of original list price received, a key metric, it dropped regionally by 0.8% down to 93.4%.
Okay, let's unpack that. 93.4%. What does that mean in dollars and cents?
It's a crucial metric. It means, on average, sellers across the Metroplex are now accepting offers that are 6.6% below their original asking price.
So give me an example. On a typical house.
Sure. On a $400,000 listing, the average seller is conceding about $26,400 just to get the deal closed.
26 grand. That's a new car.
It's a significant amount of money, and those seller concessions, whether it's helping with closing costs, paying for repairs, or just an outright price drop, they are now a growing expectation for any buyer in North Texas. It's part of the deal.
Okay, let's connect all of this back to that core supply dynamic. Let's use the month supply of inventory metric, the MSI. We've talked about it before, but let's just reiterate why MSI is the absolute barometer of market power.
MSI is the crucial figure because it just strips away all the emotion and just looks at the math. It asks one simple question. If we continued selling homes at the current pace, how many months would it take to sell every single one of those 50,000 homes currently listed?
And what's the magic number for a balanced market?
6 months. We consider 6 months of inventory to be a perfectly balanced market. No advantage to the buyer or the seller. Anything below 6 months favors the seller. Anything above 6 months favors the buyer.
Got it. So with inventory surging 7.4% and sales softening, how did the regional MSI move?
The North Texas MSI, it increased 6.1% year over year, and it reached 5.2 months.
5.2. So we're still technically in a seller's market, but just barely.
Just barely. And while 5.2 months is, yes, technically still slightly advantageous for the seller compared to perfect balance, the trajectory is unmistakable. The arrow was pointing one way.
Straight toward the buyer.
The market is trending rapidly toward neutrality, if not a full buyer's market soon. The high volume of inventory is simply outpacing the rate of demand, and it's pulling the entire market toward buyer favorability.
So if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at this regional data, what specific strategy shift does that 5.2 MSI and the 66 DOM suggest I should make?
It signals 2 words: patience and leverage. You no longer need to panic buy. You don't need to waive inspections.
The 66 DOM tells you that you can take your time.
Exactly. It tells you that if you find a property you like, you have on average about 2 months before you need to feel any real pressure. And the 5.2 MSI tells you that if you don't like that house, there are plenty of others to choose from.
So my strategy shifts.
Your strategy should shift from how fast can I make a full price offer to how hard can I negotiate. We already know the average seller is prepared to drop their price by 6.6%. You should use that expectation as your starting point.
So the regional verdict is crystal clear. A moderate, inventory-driven correction is firmly underway. But this is where the story gets really counterintuitive, and it's what we've been building to.
Right.
If the entire region is slowing down this much, How is it even possible that one of its biggest counties, Tarrant County, is performing completely differently?
That is the analytical tension we have to resolve. The regional data is painting one big, broad picture of a slowdown. But the local data, for established areas with really strong underlying job markets like Tarrant County, it shows an entirely different narrative.
All right, this is where it gets really compelling for me. If we zoom past those regional numbers and we just put a microscope on Tarrant County, we're talking Fort Worth and all its surrounding suburbs, we see a market that is resisting nearly every single major regional headwind.
It really is. It's an island of stability.
So the big question is why? What fundamental differences are insulating Tarrant County from the storm that's hitting everywhere else?
Well, the stability, it suggests a combination of things. It has to be stronger underlying demand combined with a very different behavior on the inventory side.
What do you mean by that?
Tarrant County is exhibiting the characteristics of a mature urban core. It attracts concentrated, high-quality job migration, corporate relocations, which makes it less susceptible to that generalized market fear that's caused by interest rate swings.
So let's get into the numbers. Let's start with the most dramatic deviation from the regional average, which has to be price performance.
Absolutely. So remember, regionally, prices dropped 2.7%. In Tarrant County, the median sales price held entirely stable. It showed a 0.0% change year over year.
0.0. It maintained a median price of $345,000. No change at all. I mean, that is remarkable.
It's more than remarkable. It suggests that the price floor in Tarrant County is exceptionally solid. The pressure points that are affecting surrounding counties, investor liquidations, new homes piling up, they are not forcing the median seller in Tarrant County to compromise their position.
Was this just a one-month fluke?
Not at all. The year-to-date median change is also 0.0% at $349,900. So this price resilience, it's the clearest signal you can get of Tarrant County's underlying market health.
But there's a fascinating wrinkle in this price data, and it highlights a really interesting nuance about who is actually buying in Tarrant County right now.
Yes.
While the median price, the exact middle point was flat, the average sales price actually went up significantly.
This is a key analytical point. You have to look at both. The average sales price in Tarrant County climbed 4.4% year over year, up to $448,425.
So explain that. How can the median be flat, but the average be up over 4%?
It's a specific statistical outcome. When the median, the midpoint, is static, but the average is rising, it means a disproportionately high number of sales are happening at the high end of the market.
So the luxury market is pulling up the average.
Precisely. It suggests that the high interest rates are successfully freezing out the middle and entry-level buyer. They're on the sidelines. But the affluent buyer, the one with significant cash, or who is just less sensitive to rates, they're still active.
So this could be an executive relocating for a new job, or maybe someone moving from California and liquidating assets to make a cash purchase.
Exactly. That upper quartile of the Tarrant County market is demonstrating exceptional health, and it's pulling that average price up even as the general market activity cools down. That resilience among high-wage earners or cash buyers, it acts as a really strong buffer for overall property valuations in the county.
Okay, now let's look at the engine that drives all this price stability, which has to be supply control. Regionally, inventory surged 7.4%. What did Tarrant County do?
Tarrant County did the opposite.
The exact opposite.
The inventory of homes for sale there actually decreased slightly by 0.8%, settling at 6,903 units. This small negative change is the foundational reason for the price stability we were just talking about.
Okay, wait. If the regional inventory is surging, but Tarrant's is shrinking, where's that difference coming from? Are fewer people in Fort Worth and Arlington just deciding to sell their homes?
That appears to be the primary factor. New listings in Tarrant County were down 6.6% year over year.
So sellers are staying put.
Tarrant sellers are staying put in greater numbers than their regional counterparts. Maybe they feel more secure in their jobs or their lifestyle, or maybe they're just more acutely aware of the lock-in effect because they recognize the inherent value and stable demand of their specific location.
So they know they have a good thing.
They know they have a good thing. And this reduced flow of fresh listings onto the market, it creates this sort of artificial scarcity that shields Tarrant from the inventory glut that is crushing prices in other parts of the Metroplex.
And this brings us straight back to that critical power metric, the month's supply of inventory. If inventory is shrinking slightly while demand, especially at the high end, remains strong, Tarrant's MSI must be exceptionally tight.
It is the starkest contrast in the entire data set.
compared to the regional average of 5.2 months.
So remember, the entire North Texas region is closing in on a balanced market at 5.2 months. Tarrant County's MSI remained static, 0% change year over year. It's holding at 3.8 months.
3.8. Let's just hammer this point home. What does a 3.8-month supply mean for a buyer shopping in Tarrant County right now versus a buyer shopping in that 5.2-month market elsewhere?
It means the experience is completely different. Competition is still fierce. It's just maybe a little quieter. In a 3.8-month market, inventory turns over quickly.
So you still have to be ready to go.
You still need to be pre-approved, you need to be competitive, and you have to be decisive. If a property in Tarrant County is priced correctly, it will still generate a lot of interest, maybe multiple offers, and it will sell quickly.
Versus the 5.2-month market.
In a 5.2-month market, you have more time. You can think about it over the weekend. You can afford to submit an offer with contingencies. In Tarrant, the sellers still hold most of the negotiation leverage because the demand is concentrated enough to quickly soak up that limited supply.
So the stability we're seeing isn't because of overwhelming transaction volume. You said closed sales did decrease a little bit.
Right. They decreased modestly by 2.8%.
So it's not about more sales. It's about the strength of the demand relative to the very constrained supply.
That is the exact dynamic. Tarrant County is navigating the high-rate environment by minimizing the available product for sale. And you can see that leverage play out in the speed of the sales and the level of concessions.
How fast are homes moving in Tarrant? Regionally, we're at 66 days.
Tarrant homes are moving a little bit slower than last year, which reflects the general environment, but they're still comparatively much faster than the region. The days on market, the DOM, it increased slightly by 9.8% to 56 days.
56? That's 10 full days faster than the regional average.
10 days, that's significant. It suggests buyers in Tarrant are still operating with a greater sense of urgency. They're willing to commit sooner than buyers elsewhere.
And the concessions. Are Tarrant centillers holding the line better on price?
They are. They're making fewer concessions. Tarrant sellers received 94.3% of their original list price. Now, that's a moderate drop of 0.7%, but critically, you have to compare it to the regional average.
Which is 93.4%.
Exactly. So Tarrant County sellers are still capturing nearly a full percentage point more of their original asking price. On that median $345,000 home, that difference translates to about $3,100 in extra negotiating leverage that is retained by the seller.
It just reinforces those tighter market conditions.
It does.
So if we synthesize all of this for Tarrant County, what we're seeing is a market that's being stabilized by the decision of existing homeowners not to sell. That creates a high-quality scarcity that's being met by these rate-insensitive buyers at the high end. It's a very robust, very defensively sound market.
It is the definition of resilience in a mature market. While all the headlines are screaming about an overall DFW slowdown, the concentrated urban cores are exhibiting real structural strength.
Which is fascinating. Now, let's see what happens when we look even further out, beyond that stable core.
This is where the volatility really starts to show up.
Right. So if Tarrant County is our center of gravity, our point of stability, then the surrounding areas seem to be experiencing market forces that are just pulling them in wildly different directions.
That's a great way to describe it.
We absolutely cannot talk about North Texas real estate as a monolith. I mean, the data just reveals this profoundly fragmented landscape. And it seems to be based entirely on, volume, proximity to the core, and local economic drivers.
That fragmentation is where the real story of this DFW correction lies. That regional average we talked about in the beginning, it's essentially just an aggregation of all these wild swings happening at the same time.
So we need to break it down.
We need to distinguish between the high-volume sprawl counties and the really low-volume rural outliers. Let's start with the big northern growth engines, Collin and Denton counties.
Okay, Collin and Denton. For years, I mean, they were just defined by relentless growth. New corporate campuses, soaring home prices. They really represented the peak of that post-pandemic boom.
They were the poster children for it.
So how are they navigating this new reality of high rates and high inventory?
They are experiencing a very sharp and a very swift correction. Let's look at Collin County first. They experienced a steep median sales price drop of 9.3% year over year.
9.3%. Wow.
It's a huge drop. It brought their median price down significantly to $440,000.
A nearly 10% price drop in 1 year is a rapid deceleration. What caused such a massive swing in Collin, especially when Tarrant was completely flat?
The answer is volume, and specifically the volume of new inventory. That huge price drop was coupled with a massive 28.9% increase in the number of homes for sale.
29% more homes on the market.
Yes. Collin County is heavily dependent on new construction, and it's also dependent on buyers migrating from high-cost coastal areas who often need big mortgages.
So they're very rate sensitive.
Extremely rate sensitive. When the high interest rates hit, that specific buyer pool just evaporated, and all that new inventory from builders piled up immediately, forcing a really significant price adjustment downward.
So it's that combination. High volume of new homes combined with a rate-sensitive buyer created the perfect storm for a market correction. How did that translate to the Market Power Index, the MSI?
Well, Collin County's month supply of inventory, it jumped 21.1% up to 4.6 months.
So still technically a seller's market, but getting close to that regional average.
It is. But the real story isn't the number itself, it's the speed of the shift. A quick jump in MSI like that, it means sellers who maybe bought at the peak in 2022 are now feeling substantial pressure to drop their prices to attract a much, much smaller pool of qualified buyers.
And Denton County, its neighbor, is it mirroring this same severe correction?
It's a very similar story. Denton County saw a significant price drop of 7.9% in its median price, which settled at $437,250.
Still a big drop.
A very big drop. And the mechanics are the same. Inventory there increased 19.2%, and its days on market jumped 23.1% up to 64 days. So these two counties, Collin and Denton, they really show us that this rate environment is punishing the markets that relied most heavily on highly leveraged growth and that massive influx of new inventory.
Okay, now let's quickly contrast that with the other major urban core, Dallas County. It seems to be behaving more like Tarrant, showing that stability, but maybe with slightly different inventory dynamics.
That's right. Dallas County held remarkably steady. It actually saw a slight median price increase of 1.1%, up to $368,950.
So up, not down?
Up just a bit. Now, its inventory was up 6.7%, which is close to the regional average, and its MSI increased slightly to 4.9 months, so it's a little bit softer than Tarrant.
But it's not seeing the collapse that Collin and Denton are seeing. Why?
Well, like Tarrant, Dallas County benefits from maturity. It has established employment centers, a very stable demographic profile, and generally older, less volatile housing stock. It resists the wild swings that you see in those new construction-heavy sprawl zones.
Okay, now let's move to the fringes.
Yeah.
Because this section, to me, highlights why looking at a regional average is often just meaningless. When we look at these smaller, often more rural counties, the low transaction volume leads to just extreme statistical volatility.
It's wild. This is less about identifying trends and more about seeing market fragility.
What do you mean by fragility?
I mean that in these low-volume counties, the sale of just one or two really expensive or really cheap properties can completely break the median price for the month. It gives us these wild swings that would be, catastrophic in a high-volume market like Dallas or Tarrant.
Okay, so let's look at some examples. Let's start with the extreme gainers, the counties that saw massive price appreciation in October, which seems impossible in this market. Callahan County is a great one.
Callahan County, yeah. It saw its median sales price shoot up an astounding 79.2% in just 1 month.
79%.
To a median of $322,500. But what's crucial to understand is the context. This happened even though inventory went down and the MSI tightened.
So what does that mean?
It means the few homes that actually sold in Callahan County in October were significantly higher-end properties, maybe luxury homes or large ranches. And those few sales statistically inflated the median price for that single month. It speaks to a severe lack of liquidity, a lack of sales in the lower end of their market.
And Palo Pinto County had an even bigger single-month spike.
It did. Palo Pinto County reported a staggering 70.7% jump in its median sales price, reaching $478,000 for October.
Which is probably driven by lakefront properties on Possum Kingdom Lake.
Very likely. But here's where you have to be careful. If you look at the annual trend for Palo Pinto, the year-to-date median price increase is 21.5%. Now, that's still a huge increase, but the difference between a 70% monthly jump and a 21% yearly trend illustrates just how statistically volatile this low-volume data can be.
And then there's Stevens County, which is the absolute outlier.
Stevens County takes the prize. It had the highest single-month median price increase in our entire data set. An unbelievable plus 130.0%.
130% to what median price?
Just $257,000. And this was driven by a huge spike in closed sales, which jumped from only 4 units last year to 11 units this year.
So when a market moves from 4 sales to 11 sales, and those happen to be more expensive properties, the median just explodes upward.
The statistics break.
I have to challenge this then. If
Yeah.
I'm an investor and I see Stevens County is up 130%, should I suddenly think this is the next boom market?
Absolutely not. You should see this as a giant red warning sign of statistical fragility. The 130% jump is almost certainly an anomaly. It's not a trend. A liquid, stable market does not move 130% in 1 month.
It's just noise.
It's pure statistical noise.
Okay, let's pivot to the other side of that coin, the collapse scenario. Where do we see extreme downside that exposes that same fragility?
Well, we see profound struggle in several of these low-volume areas. Look at a place like Clay County. Even though their number of closed sales was actually up, their days on market saw the largest monthly increase in the data.
How big of an increase?
It jumped 355.6% to 82 days.
Wow.
So that suggests that even the few successful sales they had required these agonizingly long negotiations. It's a testament to extreme buyer resistance, even in a market with few listings.
And then we have the ultimate example of this. The textbook case is statistical noise and market illiquidity. Stonewall County.
Stonewall County is where the model just completely falls apart. They experienced an unprecedented 92.7% drop in their median sales price for October.
A drop of 93%. What did the price fall to?
It plunged to just $20,000. And on top of that, they reported a 100% drop in closed sales, going from 1 sale last year to 0 sales this year.
0. Okay, so a 92.7% price collapse sounds like the world is ending for property values there.
Yeah.
What is the real-world explanation for a number that shocking?
It is purely statistical noise caused by a total lack of sales, by illiquidity. Since 0 homes sold in October this year, there is no median price to calculate. The $20,000 figure in the data set likely reflects some kind of highly distressed land sale or maybe a title transfer that is not a typical home.
So the takeaway is not that Stonewall County homes are now worth 20 grand.
No, the takeaway is that the market there is so illiquid, so frozen, that it cannot produce reliable, consistent pricing data.
That distinction between illiquidity and a price collapse is vital. It means that while the core DFW market is just slowing down, these periphery markets are, in some cases, simply breaking down due to a lack of volume.
Exactly, and that lack of volume exposes sellers to extreme negotiation pain, which brings us to the counties that are now fully saturated with inventory.
You mean those nearing or exceeding the 12-month supply mark?
Yes, places that are deep, deep into buyer's market territory.
And let's remind everyone, 6 months is a balanced market. 12 months is utter dominance by the buyer. Which counties are experiencing this kind of market saturation?
Harrison County saw its MSI hit 12.3 months. That's a 32.3% increase from last year. Franklin County saw a massive spike, with its MSI reaching 12.9 months, up almost 90%.
And the worst one?
Montague County, it reached 13.9 months of supply, which is a spike of over 71% from last year.
Nearly 14 months of inventory just sitting there in Montague County.
Yeah.
So if I am a seller in Montague County, what is my reality right now?
Your reality is that you must be prepared for a long, grinding sale process, and you must be prepared for significant price reductions. You have over a year's worth of competition sitting on the market right alongside you.
A buyer knows this.
A buyer knows they have unfettered choice and absolutely zero urgency. So if you need to move, you will likely have to sell for significantly below your list price and grant major concessions just to make your property stand out from the 13 months of inventory waiting right behind it.
So the story of North Texas, then, it's really a story of two fundamentally different housing markets existing at the same time.
It really is.
You have the core urban areas, which are showing resilience because of inventory constraint and high-quality demand. And then you have the periphery, the sprawl counties and the rural areas that are showing pronounced correction, extreme volatility, and in some cases, total supply saturation.
And this divergence is the defining characteristic of the current economic cycle. The high rates are acting like a gravitational force, pulling demand and stability back into the mature, established urban centers, while simultaneously exposing the fragility of markets that were built on a foundation of low interest rates and high construction volume.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. We've gone through the nation, the region, the core, and the fringe. We've established that the North Texas region is definitely decelerating, but not uniformly at all. What are the 3 core takeaways that you really need to remember from this deep dive?
I think the first one is the clearest. The regional market as a whole has shifted decisively toward buyers. The data is unambiguous. Inventory is up 7.4%. Median prices are down 2.7%. Days on market is stretched to 66 days, and the MSI is now approaching a neutral point at 5.2 months.
So the pressure on sellers in the broad metroplex is real and measurable.
Absolutely. That's takeaway number one.
Okay, what's number two?
The second is that the core urban counties are defying this trend, and they're doing it because of supply discipline. Tarrant County, with its 0.0% median price change and its exceptionally tight 3.8 months of supply, demonstrates that localized demand and sellers' reluctance to move can completely buffer a market against those regional headwinds.
And Dallas County is showing similar, if slightly less dramatic, strength.
Correct. So the core is holding strong.
And the third takeaway?
The third is that the massive volatility we see in the periphery is exposing a deep market fragility. The steep 8% to 9% price drops in Collin and Denton, that shows the rapid correction happening in high-volume sprawl. And then the 70% to 130% price swings in the low-volume rural counties, that highlights the real danger of illiquidity when transaction volume just dries up.
Speaking of market pressure, we have to talk about affordability. It feels natural to assume that if prices are falling regionally, affordability must be getting dramatically better. But what does the Regional Housing Affordability Index, the HAI, actually reveal?
The HAI is a vital measure of market access, and regionally, it did improve. It's moving in the right direction. It climbed 5.6% year over year, reaching a score of 95.
Okay, let's make sure we internalize that definition again.
Yeah.
What does an HAI of 95 actually mean for the average buyer in North Texas?
An HAI of 100 means the median household income is exactly what is necessary to comfortably qualify for the median-priced home under the prevailing interest rates.
Okay, a perfect match.
A perfect match. Since our regional HAI is 95, it means the median household income is currently 95% of what is needed to qualify for that median-priced home of $360,000.
So we're close, but not there yet.
We're 5% short.
So if the median household income in DFW is, let's say for the sake of argument, $85,000, we need that median household to earn about 5% more. That's roughly $4,500 extra per year just to comfortably clear that qualification hurdle.
That's right. And that shows that even with some price corrections and a tiny bit of rate relief, the typical home is still technically just out of reach for the typical median income earner in North Texas.
That is the critical takeaway on affordability, isn't it?
It is. The gap is closing, which is progress, but it hasn't closed yet. The high interest rates are still adding so much drag, making that final 5% hurdle too high for a really large segment of the population. And that, in turn, is what continues to slow down the volume of closed sales.
This has been a true deep dive into the numbers. I mean, we've shown a market that is fundamentally bifurcating based on geography and transaction volume. We've moved so far beyond the simplistic prices are down headline.
Indeed. And this all leads directly to the final provocative thought that we want to leave you with today.
Okay.
We noted the remarkable stability in the high-volume core areas like Tarrant and Dallas, and that stability is secured by concentrated demand and by liquidity. Lots of transactions.
Right.
But if we look at the other extreme, the volatility and the complete lack of liquidity we saw in the rural counties, where prices can swing 70 or 90% because only a handful of deals actually close, does this current high-rate environment expose a serious long-term structural flaw in those smaller periphery markets?
That's the question. If these low-volume markets can't generate reliable, consistent pricing when transaction activity is suppressed by interest rates, how sustainable are property valuations there in the long run?
Exactly. Are we just watching a temporary correction play out, or is the very foundation of property finance starting to crack outside the core urban centers simply because of illiquidity?
The stability of the core is secured by the sheer volume of sales that smooths out those statistical swings.
And the fragility of the periphery is revealed by the complete absence of that volume. It's a fundamental indicator of financial health that we have to monitor very closely as long as rates remain elevated.
Absolutely fascinating analysis. Thank you so much for walking us through this incredibly complex data set and helping us understand the true story of North Texas resilience and fragility.
My pleasure. The numbers never lie, but, they always need a translator.
And thank you all for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the data that matters most to you. Until then, stay informed.